also. Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for being here tonight on the fourth lesson of grassroots immigration. So today's lesson will be about the new borders, new walls, and the case of Poland. Tonight we have with us, our guest is I want to apologize before for bad pronunciation of your name, Professor. So Thomas Sienio is our guest for tonight, and he's a graduate of the Catholic University of Lublin and the Chicago-Kent College of Law in Illinois Institute of Technology, and also having a Master of Laws in International and Comparative Law. He also saw a PhD in Law. Since 2002, he has been the president of the board of the Rule of Law Institute. He also is a member of the Commission for Migrants at the Polish Ombudsman Office and the consultor of the Migration Council at the Polish Bishops' Conference. Since 2009, he has been coordinating the work of the Lublin Regional Immigrant Support Networks. Professor Thomas is also a professor at the Faculty of Law at the Catholic University of Lublin. He also serves as a coordinator of the Refugee Legal Clinic at the Catholic University of Lublin. We are really happy to have you here tonight, and thank you for your participation. And so the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this introduction. Thank you for inviting me to speak with participants of this year project. It's an honor to share with you some thoughts and statistics and observations on functioning of Polish system of protection of migrants. And actually in the last years, it's a Polish system of excluding migrants from our territory as well. So as you have introduced me very well, I've been doing this legal aid and research in the field of migration law for more than 15 years, so almost 20 years. And I believe that I have some, let's say, comments to be made on how the system works and why we can say that we have new borders, new walls. It would be very good to start with showing where is Poland, because if you're all over the world, that's probably very important, but you can imagine yourself where is Poland. Poland is located, normally we always say, between two very big countries, Germany and Russia, it used to be. So for many centuries, we've been somewhere in between, and this is something that Poland was the country of refugees, because for many years Polish people were forced to leave Polish territory because of invasions, partitions, wars, occupations, political oppressions. And I believe Poles were among the most, let's say, active migrants around the world for many decades, and we were accepted as refugees in very many countries in all over the world. I think you can find Polish diaspora that is living there for many years or sometimes centuries. And right now, after the Second World War, Poland became a homogeneous state that is composed of, let's say, one nation, mostly one nation, one ethnic group, one religion as well. Most of Poles were Christians, and I mean 96% of persons were baptized. And this is something that is the background of the situation that we have right now. And until I think year 2000, 99% of residents of Poland were also Polish nationals, Polish citizens. We almost didn't have migrants at all, and only during last years we've experienced a big diaspora, big migration after the first invasion of Russia in Ukraine and the first Maidan. We've had opened our borders to refugees from Crimea, Donbass, Lugansk, and they were not technically refugees. They were economic migrants that have never asked for international protection. But this caused Poland to say that we hosted 1 million of refugees, and it was in year 2014, 15, and 16. This was the argument used by Polish politicians to say that we are not able to participate in relocation of refugees from Greece and Italy after so-called refugee crisis after Syrian war. We, Polish government, in 2015-16 rejected the proposal of receiving a couple of thousand of refugees relocated, saying that we have 1 million of refugees that were not refugees. And this is how the situation starts in Poland. And I wanted to mention that Poland could not handle accepting 5,000, 11,000 of asylum seekers from Italy and Greece. And right now, some people say that we are hosting 1.5 million refugees from Ukraine. So only a couple of years later. I will show you my presentation on the screen so that you can follow it easier, and I would appreciate questions or comments that you would make during this time. If it's not, I hope I will do it slowly so you can understand it better. I think it requires some good explanation. So here it is, the first page, the title of my presentation, my affiliation. And I want to set up some context of where we are right now, okay? So Poland is a signatory of 1951 Geneva Convention since 1991. So for almost or over 30 years, we are granting refugee status in Poland, and this is the first legal document that is important in this context. Poland is also bound by EU directives and regulations forming common European asylum system, including qualification directive that is a basis of granting refugee status or a subsidiary protection. But we also have two internal legal acts that are regulating the situation of foreigners. First of them is 2003 law on granting international protection on the territory of Poland. This is 2003, and there is also law on foreigners that deals mostly with return orders and let's say economic migration. In 2022, we have included into our legislative, let's say, framework the law of 12th of March 2022 on the aid to Ukrainian citizens affected by military conflict on the territory of this country. And it was implementation of the directive 2001/55 on temporary protection and council implementing decisions of the 4th of March. This law that I will not be speaking too much about today, but it is the basis, legal basis on accepting over a million of Ukrainian citizens who were registered in Poland and received a social security number and had right to stay in the territory of Poland under the status of this temporary protection. Just to mention that the temporary protection status may be granted according to two legal acts. One of them is Polish law, and it mostly deals with Ukrainian citizens, and the third country nationals that were fleeing Ukraine after the war could come to Poland and still received some the comparable sort of protection, but under the council implementing decision regime. So this is the legal context. What is the statistical context of the Polish system of granting protection? I have issued to you, I have shared with you the statistical data for the last 7 years, I think, 6 years, 7 years, since 2015, okay, to show you what is the number of applicants for international protection, and what is the recognition rate in Poland. So in 2015, as you can see, there was over 12,000 applicants in Poland. Just to mention that our country is almost 40 million inhabitants, 38 million inhabitants. So we have quite a small number of applicants per capita in Poland. And as you can see, in the first instance, only 348 of them received refugee status, or subsidiary protection was 167. After the appeal, this is the next column here, after the appeal, 12 of them received refugee status and 30 subsidiary protection. Why did I start with 2015, 2016? This is the moment of elections in Poland and change of our let's say policy towards migrants. The politicians of the winning conservative, I would say, party have noticed that it might be a good point to show that they are protective against inflow of migrants. And some of the things have started to be different this year. So the 2016 time is a special time when we had a NATO summit in Poland, World Youth Day, and some international events that have been excuse of the government to stop receiving some of the migrants that were fleeing from former Soviet Union. Most of Polish refugees were coming from former Soviet Union, from Russian Federation, through the territory of Belarus by train. This was our daily life. Number of recognized foreigners have dropped, by some numbers, especially recognized refugees. 2017, you can see the number of applicants that were accepted was half or less than 40% of what it used to be in the past. 2018, the number was smaller. 2019, the number was even smaller. 2020, of course, it was the time of COVID, but the number of applicants that came to Poland was the lowest since, I don't know, 25 years, I would say. And you can also imagine that I think 1/3 of them were applicants that have applied earlier. So the real number of newcomers was about 2,000 people that came to Poland. 2021, the number has grown, and it was connected with the situation of Polish-Belarusian border. First of all, after the presidential election in Belarus, I think that some Belarusian citizens have started to ask for international protection in Poland. And second, since the end of 2020, President Lukashenko has stopped protecting its border to Poland and allowed or even facilitated access to Polish territory to foreigners from many different locations that had very important reasons to flee their country. I was part of observation team of this, what was happening, and I believe I understand well that the first groups that came through this border were first Russian and Chechen, Tajik, then probably mostly Afghani refugees during the Afghan conflict. And then finally, majority of them came from Iraq, Kurdistan, part of Iraq. So the number of applicants has grown again in 2021. And also the number of recognized refugees has grown to the unprecedented values. It is connected with the number of Afghanis that were evacuated from Kabul by Polish government, and also with the fact that many Belarusians were coming to Poland. If you deduct from this group the people from Belarus or Afghanistan, I believe the numbers would be very, very low. I want to draw your attention to recognition rates over these last years, because when you look at that column here, you can see that every year a couple of hundreds of people receive protection in Poland. And in 2021, it was even more because it was over 2,000. But very, very interesting is this column when you can see the recognition rate in the second instance, in the appeal body. There is a refugee board which hears appeals against the decision of the first instance organ, Office for Foreigners, and 2 consecutive years, those appeals, and it's about 800 appeals a year, there was 0 persons that received refugee status after appeal. 800 appeals, 0 positive decisions. It's very, very remarkable. I think the second instance organ is not really an important element of our legal system, because it doesn't grant protection to almost anybody, and it just extends the administrative procedures that were in place. So if you calculate and combine all of the data, then you can see that since 1992, because after the ratification, the first decisions were issued in 1992. So 30 years of application of Geneva Convention in Poland, 183,000 foreigners applied for refugee status in Poland by the end of 2021. So it's about 6,000 people a year. It's rather low number, I would say. If it was 183,000 foreigners applied over 30 years, you can be sure that the politicians' claims that Poland received 1 million refugees from Ukraine in 2016, it was not true. They were economic migrants that have never asked for asylum. So how many refugees did we have before the war in Ukraine? Recognition rates of 30 years look like this. Since 1992, 6,000 persons received refugee status in Poland. 6,000. Subsidiary protection was about 6,800. Why it was so low? The reason for that is that Poland is a transition country. It's a transit country, sorry, transit country. 183,000 applied, but over 100,000 left without waiting for examination of their applications. Poland, as a transit country, lost and is losing every year about 60% of applicants who believe that it's better to go to Germany, UK, France, Netherlands, to ask for international protection for some reasons. It may be different reasons, but I don't want to speculate on them. I think one of the elements of that is that the social assistance to the refugees in Poland is quite, let's say, basic. Of course, they can stay in refugee camps. They can receive food there, but other than that, for many, many years, an applicant for international protection receives a pocket money per month that for every person is only 70 zlotys, which is about right now, I don't know, 15, 16 euros per month. This is not enough probably for the smokers. I don't know how much is the packet of cigarettes in your country, but if it's over 10 euros, then you can see that you can get 2 free pockets of cigarettes for a month. And how about cosmetics, going to cinemas, stuff like that. So they should not be satisfied with the pocket money that they receive or with other prospects of life after the procedure. But many of the foreigners that are coming to Poland without applying for international protection find job, and because of economic growth over last years after economic accession, I think they are successful, very often successful. By now, I think close to 2 million people coming from other countries are in Polish territory. I believe that close to 1 million people are working, so Polish economy could survive exodus of Polish persons greatly because of newcomers that were coming to Poland. The recognition rate is a tricky element. If you look at the number of 6,000 people receiving refugee status out of 180,000 applicants, it may be only 3%. But if you take into account 110,000 of people that left, then if you deduct them, the numbers are higher, not so low. The total number of recognized refugees probably about 20% if you deduct all the people that have escaped from Poland, which is lower than the European average, but not as dramatic as you would say that less than 10% of people receive recognition. Number of foreigners applying for international protection per month. I wanted to show this graph to give an example what happened in the middle of 2021. This is the middle of 2021 peak. This was COVID time, so normally the number of applicants was very low per month. But then in June, July, there is an Afghan wave, and then probably Iraqi wave in August and September that led to the number over 1,500 persons a month that applied for international protection. Then the numbers started to drop down. It was because of new walls and new borders. Yes, new borders, new walls, as you can see. Poland has delegated to protection of its Polish-Belarusian border not only border guards, not only police, but also troops, and Polish army was protecting it. And then we started to build a wall on the border. And this wall, first the fence, very dangerous fence, concertina that could hurt anybody that is trying to cross the border. And then it was built a wall. And at the same time, Polish border guards and the army started to use illegal pushbacks on this border with Belarus, trying to expel foreigners trying to get to Poland without individual assessment of their situation. I'm not saying that the country doesn't have a right to protect its borders. I just want to say that it's an international law and a duty of a state not to return anybody to the country where his life or health may be in danger and where he or she can face persecution. This is a non-refoulement provision that you probably are aware of. So Poland has started acting in clear violation of the principle of non-refoulement, returning people to the countries where their life may be in danger without assessing and evaluating, examining the claims for international protection. Okay, so we'll go further now. When has this started with the border with Belarus? Okay, in autumn 2020. These were the last weeks, I think, or first weeks of October 2020. Belarusian government has dismantled Soviet border security system that is called Sistema, and it was the best, the most effectively secured border, I think, in this region. The border between Belarus and Poland, because Belarus was still using this very, let's say, maybe effective system of electronic surveillance before the border. 800 from the border, there was a fence. When anybody was crossing it, there was an electronic signal, and then there was another line closer to the border, and Polish and Belarusian border guards were cooperating to inform each other about that. And that somebody is crossing the border, and whenever there was anybody that was crossing the border, Poland had the right to bring back this person to Belarusian border officers, and they were saying, yes, this was the person that had crossed the border illegally. And we were returning people, but it was maybe a dozen of incidents a year. This border was protected by Belarus. But in October, Belarusian border guards started to allow other people, other foreigners, to cross the border. So the Rule of Law Institute first client crossed this border on October 7th, 2020 in Narevka. This is a little town next to the border. And then we observed dozens of people that were crossing the border, and actually we asked how many of them were. And in November of 2020, there was over 100 people that crossed this border, and Belarus has not received them back because they said they never been to Belarus. They didn't want to accept them back. So readmission agreement between EU and Belarus stopped to be honored. So Polish border guards had to do something with this first wave, 100 people in 2020, and then this number has started growing. What is the context of this crossing the border against the law? All the signatories of Geneva Convention have promised, are obliged not to penalize illegal entry or presence of anybody that is asking for international protection, asking for asylum. The Article 31 stipulates that contracting states shall not impose penalties on account of illegal entry or presence on the refugees who, coming directly from the territory where their life or freedom was threatened, in the sense of Article 1, enter or are present in the territory without authorization, provided they present themselves without delay to the authorities and show good cause for their illegal entry and presence. Okay, this is a very important duty of depenalization of illegal entry. It means that if you are escaping from persecution, you can use fake passport, you can use you can illegally cross the border to the country where you are seeking asylum, and you should present yourself to the authorities of this country saying, I'm an asylum seeker, I want to ask for refugee status, and please accept my claim. And then you should not, you as a signatory of the Geneva Convention shouldn't bring this person to criminal court for illegal crossing of the border. Okay, this is the first context. The second context of international law is restrictions of movements, also Article 31. Contracting states shall not apply on the movements of such refugees restrictions other than those which are necessary, and such restrictions shall only be applied until the status of a country is regularized. So it shows that detention, restriction of movement, including detention, should be an exception, not a rule. That you can detain, of course, but it should be used only when necessary, only when it's reasonable, and for reasonable periods, if this person comes to Poland. So we have asked for the data of the 2020, autumn 2020, and also for the further data, but I think in this nutshell of 2020, you could see what happened in Poland. So the first wave that crossed this Polish border in 2020 consisted of 101 foreigners, 79 adults and children, and it was striking that none of them has registered their claim for international protection. It is unthinkable. We were representing probably about 20 of those foreigners, and most of them have said that they really wanted to apply, and they were saying that they're asking for asylum, but it was never registered. So it was the first phase of managing this border issue. Border guards were not accepting the applications for asylum at the moment of stopping the person. In the consequence, there was lots of violations that were just a result of that, because in all of these cases, Polish border guard initiated return procedures. Okay, then in all of these cases, Polish border guards has informed diplomatic or consular authorities of the country of origin that they stopped their citizen. Okay, imagine that you have some political dissident that is coming through the green border from Russia, let's say, and he's being stopped at the border, and Polish border guards are informing the embassy of Russian Federation or Belarus, maybe Belarus in its case that is rare because they can come through official border checking checkpoints and they don't have to cross the border, but Russians, maybe they should, they try, and their presence is reported to the consular diplomatic posts of the country of origin. I must tell you that I've had a case of the volunteer that was politically involved in one of the regimes of the world that came to Polish border guards during this time of crisis, and he has said that I'm a political activist. I have proofs of my political activity on my phone, and I want to ask for political asylum. And Polish border guards have not received this asylum claim. They started and issued return decision on the same day, informed the embassy of this country about this person. And actually, a week later, there was an social media report of that in the country of origin that Polish border guards have stopped such a number of persons from this country and they were put to detention center, you know, so that was quite fast information transmission, I would say. Next issue, not only informing the authorities is a problematic. Very problematic is the issue of starting criminal cases. As you remember, Article 31 was guaranteeing depenalization, but in this case, all of the foreigners, adult foreigners, were brought to court because of violating the criminal law, and most of them pled guilty of that, and they accepted some suspended judgment for this criminal act. They didn't know that it is not a crime or there is a depenalization of this crime. So this was another element, and in all of the cases, border guards have sent requests to local courts to detain everybody for 90 days. And it was done by all of the courts. All the courts agreed that these people, including children, should be put in detention centers, which are like prisons. You know, they are there to be deported, you know, you can say. Okay, so what are the problems with access to protection on those new borders and new walls between Poland and Belarus? So even before the border wall was built and before practice of pushbacks that are euphemistically described as escorting foreigners to the borderline. This is the way. If the Belarusian border guards are not accepting the persons, there is no formal handing over of the foreigner to the officials of the border country. Only thing that Polish border guards could do was to escort the foreigners to the borderline. In practice, very often this was very tragic. The foreigners, migrants, families with children were left in the middle of a forest, and they had to go back to the border guards of Belarus if they were there, and these were not allowing them to come back to Belarus. They were threatening them with dogs, with force, and these people were subject to a lot of violence in this border zone. So even before this pushback practice, there was a lack of respect to Poland's international obligations. What were those violations? Okay, so not accepting, not registering applications for international protection. This is very important. We actually discovered that only 5 of 16 units of the division of the border guards in this region were using Eurodac devices. So there was no possibility of registering fingerprints of those persons. I must tell you that a couple of weeks ago we received answer from the border guards, and right now all of the units are in possession of those Eurodac devices. So right now all the persons that would like to apply for international protection, their claims may be registered. There was only very few cases in 2021 when applications for international protection was accepted by the border guards. In the beginning of 2021, we were aware of one case of Tajik woman that could register the claim in this territory. In the second part of the year, the numbers have grown because Polish Ombudsman's office was present at the border, and if they were present and somebody was really asking, and it was documented that somebody is asking for protection, the claim was registered by the border guards. So from the interviews that we've had with foreigners in detention centers, we can estimate that maybe half of them was willing to lodge application for international protection. But even then, they were said, it's not now at the border, you can do it later in detention center that you can apply, okay? Pushbacks were done without individualized assessment of the reasons. That was one of the elements that you couldn't do this individualized assessment if you had access to interpreters over the phone that were very often interpreting to the group of migrants, not to individuals. So it was very hard for the migrants to express what are the real reasons of the escape if it was done not in the situation that could guarantee let's say confidentiality of those talks. I think there was a lot of hurry, and there was very few interpreters of Kurdish, of Arabic, of Parsi, Dari that could help. So these people were really victims of illegal actions. Okay, so not accepting applications for international protection at the border. This was the first very, very important violation of Polish border guards, because if it was done, the whole life of the asylum seeker could be different from that moment. Most of the things would not have happened to them if the case was registered. This should be considered as the original sin leading to many subsequent violations of the rights of persons in Poland, and it still is, I believe. So what are the consequences of not accepting these applications? Informing the authorities of the country of origin. So some foreigners may be put in danger. Starting criminal case. The foreigners were not aware of depenalization. Starting return deportation procedure and issuing return decision very often during 24 hours. That was interesting. If we probably have searched through 100 files of cases that were at the border, and sometimes you could see that a person was interviewed. There was a protocol of the interview that finished 11:45 p.m. one day, and below the protocol it is said, okay, right now the foreigner has had access to his files, and he said that he has no any motions concerning his files. So this was, he could be actively participating in his administrative procedure. And then there is a decision issued the same day. So within 15 minutes left to midnight, the foreigner has accessed the files. And then there was a 5 pages or 10 pages long return decision issued to him, which is not possible to be done within 15 minutes. So I'm sure that there were lots of formal truths that were done during this time and had nothing to do with the rule of law. And then, because there was no acceptance of the asylum application, migrants were sent to detention centers for 90 days instead of 60. And then those times were extended in the detention centers. What were other problems that we observed at the border? Collective interpretation by phone by Kurdish interpreters, for example. Even in the courts, it happened that some Kurdish interpreters were saying, "I know what he wants to say. I interpreted it already once, so I'll just say what was said by him." And unfortunately, there were some cases like that. So one of the very critical practices that we observed is collecting from foreigners declarations that they will not appeal the return orders. You can do it after you received administrative decision. You can declare that you accept it and you will not appeal it. It's very strange that most of them have said that I don't want to go back to the country of origin, but when they receive the return orders, they have declared that they will not appeal it. They didn't know what they are saying. They didn't know what they are writing, what they are signing. So many of them have been in danger of deportation because of that, because they were sent first to the detention centers, and then they could be deported if they do not apply for international protection. So the situation of Polish border is caused by this lack suspended train connection with Belarus. Since the COVID times, this train doesn't go, and there is no legal way to get to Poland unless somebody is taking his private car and drives private car without visa and tries to get to Polish territory and ask for asylum. Then it's probably possible. But other than that, no public carrier, no public transportation company, no train, no bus will take on its board anybody without visa. So these people that flew to Belarus from Middle East, they could only get to Poland by illegal entries. There was no checkpoints for pedestrians. There was no place where you could get to Poland using on foot. So the only way to get here was illegal, let's say irregular entry through the forest. There was insufficient capacity to collect applications for international protections, and it still is, I believe, and issuing those not issuing refusal of entry decisions. This is very technical issue maybe, but some of you may understand that when somebody is not accepted in the country where he wants to go, the rule is that you stamp his passport saying that that there is a refusal of entry, and according to EU law, you should get a written decision on the format, on the standard form, saying what is the reason, and then you can appeal it. But right now, when people are trying to get to Poland from Belarus, even like using some taxis, private taxis, they are not getting those stamps in their passport. They are returned without stamps. They cannot appeal it. So my first element was about access to protection. This access to protection was very difficult during this time, and because everybody was detained at the border, the system of detention in Poland has grown dramatically in 2021 and in the beginning of 2022. I will show you some statistics. Okay. So here are the names of detention facilities. I visited them all, not only after 2021, but even before. I was doing monitorings of those detention facilities. Normally, there were 6 detention facilities in Poland, and during this time of 2021 peak of illegal entries, let's say at the border, the number of detainees and places has grown. So if you look at 2021, the 1st of January 2021, Poland had 384 places in detention centers. In June 2021, there was 463, but already 5 months later, there was 5 times more detention places in detention centers. Mostly because we've opened some old military base for for men that were stopped at the border, and all of men, single men, were put to the military training ground in Węgrzyn with a very bad conditions, and it was horrible. This was the only place that I could not get access to, because it was part of Krosno Odrzańskie, but they didn't allow that. Even if the border guards have said, yes, you can enter, then when somebody was coming, military people were saying, but this is the military zone. You don't have the permission to enter it from our commander. So it was very difficult. The number of people detained in every place was growing by many, and number of like square meterage per person has been limited. So after this increased inflow of migrants, we went to 2 square meters per person in detention centers, when in the prisons the guarantee is minimum 3 square meters. So in detention centers that was lower, and Council of Europe recommendations are saying that 4 square meters is a minimum that should be used in prisons, in penitentiary institutions. So we went to half of this, let's say, minimum standard that is done in the Council of Europe. So the availability of places in Polish detention centers was shown to you, and right now I want to show you the number of people detained. You know, it's on the right side. You know, on the 1st of January, 251 persons were in detention, while in July it was still 457. In August, 1100. In September, 1400. The peak moment was October and November, when there was 1800 people in detention centers in Poland. About 500 of them were children. About 500 of them were children because we were detaining full families, including small children, pregnant women, victims of violence, and it caused a lot of suffering in those detention centers, which we have been observing. So detention, as a rule, in Poland is possible for two main reasons. First reason to detain anybody is to establish or verify foreigners' identity. If migrant doesn't have identity documents, it's, let's say, quite standard that if you have somebody that is not identified at all, you have a right as a state to stop this person to verify its identity. Second is to collect information in asylum case that can only be achieved when the foreigner is present. I would say that when you go back to my previous part of presentation, when I said that 60% of foreigners have treated Poland as a transit country, you could see that maybe sometimes to collect information in asylum case, it might be necessary to stop the foreigner if this is the only way to stop him here on the territory of Poland. You may say that I'm not a fan of detention and I'm against any sort of detention of children, but I can imagine that when there's an unidentified person crossing the border, the state has a right to stop this person and to check who he is. Okay, so the collecting of information in the asylum case is mostly having asylum interview. I will tell you, this is the main reason to stop the person, to conduct asylum interview. Okay, so what are the problems of the length of detention here? First of them is not registering asylum requests at the border, and the border guards ignoring the law about extending detention when the delay was not caused by the applicant, was applying for extensions of this detention. So many foreigners have spent in detention facilities about 6-8 months without even being interviewed. Although this is the reason of detention of asylum seekers, you have not allowed them to be, you have not sent interpreters to interview them with the migration officers. The only interrogation was done, I believe, by Internal Security Agency that was really looking for any sort of terroristic threat to Poland during this time. But there was no let's say examination of asylum claims, and even the desire and need to release somebody from detention centers had to be first consulted with this internal security agency. In Polish, it is called ABW, and it caused that anybody would spend extra 2 weeks, because this was the date that this agency had to say veto to release of the person. Okay, detention in Poland during this time was also including some wrong policy choice. What was the paradox? Okay, I want you to focus on this for a moment. Priority was given to interview families with children. Okay, so you may say, yes, that's right. You know, children should be kept in detention as short as possible. So it made Office for Foreigners in the position, it caused, sorry, how to say it in English. As a result, only families with children were interviewed, and only in these cases, the decision could have been given by the Office for Foreigners. What was the decision in the case of people crossing the border illegally? In cases of Iraqi refugees, majority, 99% of them were rejections. So after negative decisions in asylum administrative case, the stay of those persons could have been extended over 6 months. So because of priority of treatment of families with children, they were staying in detention center longer than 6 months, while individual applicants, men or women, that were not priority, were not interviewed, and after 6 months, there was no negative decision, and it was illegal to keep them longer in detention centers. So paradox was that to help families with children, Polish government has made them suffer even longer in detention centers. We were helping families that spent time in detention centers over 10 months, families with children, pregnant women, and they were stopped in the prison facilities for a very, very long time. There was a detention of vulnerable migrants, children. By the end of November 2021, 518 children were detained. At the beginning of the year, or in the middle of the year, only 26 of them were detained. So you could see that the number of children in detention was huge. Sometimes unaccompanied children were treated as adults, because people from Afghanistan mostly, they were coming here with their tazkiras, or the copies of tazkiras, so the identity documents, and Polish border guards did not believe them in their stories, how old they were, and they were checking the age by the bone age, and those checks were not very professionally done. They didn't have any margin for mistake, and most of the persons that were checked like that had the date of birth of 1st of January 2003. That was the age, the date of birth, which was not true in many cases that we've seen. There was a detention of vulnerable migrants. We were representing 7 pregnant women in one detention center. 2 of them have miscarried during detention, and they were not released even after the miscarriage, despite reporting psychological suffering. So it was a huge suffering of these people. There was a detention of victims of violence, torture, in overcrowded facilities. Persons with disabilities. There was a person after amputation of a leg, and the law says that a person that is disabled cannot be put to detention in asylum procedure, but they were not released. There were some suicidal attempts, including suicidal attempts of children that we know about. It's hard to understand restrictions on access to external psychologists that were introduced by the detention center's administration. Final slide before the break, conditions of detention. So I already mentioned that there were some extra facilities open in the detention centers. There were overcrowded facilities, 2 square meters per person, no access to doctor, because in one of the detention centers there were only 50 places at the beginning of 2021 and 700 places in mid of 2021, but the number of medical staff has not grown 12 times as a number of migrants. There was still only one doctor, so there were some problems with access to medical care in those facilities, or there was some doctor. Everything is all right. Wszystko w porządku in Polish is everything is fine. I remember many foreigners reporting this problem, that there's a doctor who says everything is fine when they had really difficult problems. Dividing of families into 2-3 detention centers, dividing of marriages, sometimes that happened. And there was a problem of released, discharged detainees, because they were let out in outside of detention centers, and they very often didn't have any money, and they had to get to the open center without any problem, any help. So let me stop my presentation at this moment, because I know that there is a break foreseen at some time.
Yes, we have a break for 10 minutes. We have actually some. Yeah, now for 10 minutes. Okay. Of course, we will see in 10 minutes, but we have 3 questions right now for the first part of the lessons. And do you prefer to respond right now?
I think it's better now. It's better now. It's better to do it now.
So from Kyle, with regards to Article 14, number 4 of the Asylum Qualification Directive in Polish law, what constitution a particularly serious crime is the tied to a length of sentence, or does that fit into a category such as with Italian domestic law?
I will answer this after the question, because I was never, interested in this particular provision of qualification directive. So after a break, I will tell you what may constitute particular serious crime here. Okay. Okay,
perfect. So for those unfamiliar, member states may revoke and or refuse to renew the status granted to a refugee by governmental, administrative, judicial, or quasi-judicial body when there are reasonable grounds for regarding him or her as a danger to the security of the member state in which he or she is present, and B, he or she having been convinced by the final judgment of a particularly serious crime, constitutional danger to the community of the member states. Okay, is the spectrum of the...
Okay, I will get back to this, how it is phrased in Polish law and how it is treated after the break. During the break, okay. I will check it.
In the case of signing a document that a person didn't know what was returned, can that still make the person be deported?
Mm-hmm.
This is probably the question about the yes. Entrance in the Poland.
The person may be deported in this case if this person does not apply for international protection. So this means that the preparation of return normally takes some time. It's not a return to Belarus, because the Belarus doesn't accept those returnees right now, but normally it's a return by plane. So to do it, you need to organize this, let's say, return operation. And during this time in the detention facility, normally individuals are asking for international protection, and according to the principle of non-refoulement, you cannot execute this decision on return during the time of asylum procedure. So if the person doesn't ask for asylum, doesn't apply for asylum, then of course this person will be deported if there are documents of this person in hands of Polish authorities. And Polish authorities have great, let's say, practice of cooperation with consular posts of the other countries, third countries, and they are issuing those documents for return, the laissez-passer, to be sent back to the country of origin. So yes, unfortunately, this person will be deported even if this person didn't know what she or he was signing. But in fact, under this declaration, there is normally some sort of signature of some interpreter saying that the set of documents was translated to the foreigner. So it shows that this has been translated, which is not the case.
Okay, thank you. So Kyle, so I have another question. We have seen in Greece that when even Frontex monitors are present, the state reserves the right to declare areas where pushbacks or military operation zones, and the abuse continues. We clearly need more monitors, but how can we resolve the above issue to make that meaningful?
Okay, this was the case in Poland because we've introduced a special, let's say, status of this territory of the border zones, which did not allow any activists, any monitors to enter. So because of that, there was no monitoring of the operations of Polish authorities in this particular area. So that's right. The monitoring was not present in the border areas, about a couple of kilometers from the border, and without that, I think it's very hard to report that somebody was really pushed back to the country of origin. There are different practices that were in place here, that people were sharing photos of being in Poland, sharing the locations, and activists were actually getting in contact with them outside of this border zone. But still, it did not prevent the border guards and the army to send people back, to push people back to the Belarusian territory. So I don't know how we can make it meaningful if there is no access to this territory. Right now, we do have access to territory, but still the activists are being are not very welcome by the security organs in this territory, and sometimes they report that they are mistreated. Their cars are destroyed by some unknown perpetrators. So this looks like a fight, still like a fight.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Kyle, for the question. So we'll see in 10 minutes. Okay,
thank you very much.
Let's take a break. I think Professor can start for the second part of the lesson.
All right, so let me first refer to the question of Kyle Key, because I was trying to establish that during this time when I will try to. I hope you can see my screen right now with the text of Polish law about the implementation of this provision of qualification directive, Article 14. It's interesting to me that as far as a revocation of refugee status is concerned, it doesn't refer to committing of particular serious crime. That doesn't seem like it is part of that element. It speaks about that only when you can exclude somebody from the international protection if somebody has committed a crime other than political outside of a territory of Republic of Poland before applying for international protection. So this is one of the elements that can be taken into account. So you can, according to law, you cannot take back or revoke the refugee status because of this element. But as far as supplementary protection is concerned, then it is possible to revoke the supplementary protection in case of the foreigner that has committed this crime. We'll say that it refers to the Article 19, that after granting supplementary subsidiary protection, there is an information revealed that somebody has been guilty of one of those crimes that are the grounds for excluding from international protection in Article 19 or 20 of Polish law. So it doesn't seem like you can do it with this particular serious crime. You can revoke the refugee status, but I believe it might be an issue for depriving of a residence card after the person has been granted the residence permit. After being a refugee, you get a residence permit, and then during the time of extension of your residence permit, there is a check according to the regular migration law. If person does not constitute a threat to public order, public security, or he is not a threat to let's say, security of the state. As far as these elements are concerned, as far as I remember, because I didn't have the possibility of seeing such a case in court, most of the data that is being used by the court is secret. So even the foreigners cannot know what is the reason for let's say, rejecting him as a refugee. It's during the procedure, if it's a secret data. Then only Polish ombudsman and persons that special lawyers that have security agency authorization can access some elements of the secret material, secret files of the security agency, and only then they can know what were the reasons for rejection. But it's a rejection. It's not about revocation of refugee status. Revocation of refugee status, I believe it's only via the procedure of extending the validity of residence card, residence permit. If you have questions concerning that, I have a couple of co-workers here that might be more familiar with this particular topic, and if you email me, I will definitely give you more specific answer if there's anything else to be said. Okay, so this was
first question, but yeah, the second one actually
we've answered during this. Yeah. During the presentation. I will share the rest of the slides that I've had, because I know that there will be some other questions, but now I will summarize the systemic problems in Polish asylum procedures during last years that we could observe. So. Okay. The main problem that I think during this refugee crisis was connected with lack of interpreters. It may seem strange because the number of applicants was not as high. If you could see that it was just 7,000 applicants in 2021, and the peak year in Poland, it was 15,000 applicants in 2013. So 7,000 was only half of the numbers that we've had before. Why did we have lack of interpreters? Okay, the answer is like this. First of all, 15,000 applicants in 2013 were mostly coming from the Russian-speaking countries. So we could use interpreters, 90% of interpreters that were speaking Russian. Right now, this year, I think 90% of applicants in the year 2021 were non-Russian speaking. So there was really a shortage of interpreters. I could see there were only like 3 or 4 Sorani, Kurdish Sorani interpreters. There were Sorani interpreters that were coming, and it appears that the dialect that they were using is different than the person that is in detention center. So the many procedures were postponed. There were not many interpreters of Farsi or Dari as well. So people from Afghanistan, if there was 1,000 Afghani evacuated asylum seekers, then it was very difficult to process all of these applications. So, and third factor was that in 2013, when there was this peak year of number of applicants, we didn't detain 2,000 people at once. And right now, in 2021, this was the number of people that were subject to detention. So the procedures during this time had to be done much faster, within 6 months, when normally you could also, the standard was 6 months, but according to European procedural directive, as I remember, in the well-justified cases, difficult cases, the procedure may last 15 months. And with persons in detention, it had to be done much faster, and people in detention did not escape. So the continuity of procedures was much stronger, because during detention time, the cases were not closed because of the fact that somebody absconded. Okay, the second element is some sort of collapse, crisis in one of the units in the Department of Asylum Procedures in the Office for Foreigners. It's a unit that was dealing with cases coming from Asia and Africa. And in 2021 and 2022, it had an unprecedented rotation of personnel. I believe there was probably 6, 7, or 8 persons normally working this unit that was dealing with Iraqi, Afghani cases and African cases, let's say, Syrian cases. And only one person, the head of the unit, has left. All the others have left during this, 12 or 15 months period. Most of them have left, and the new staff was not very experienced. And there was always people that are coming to the interview that are very fresh, very new, and they didn't know the practice of examining applications of foreigners. So it caused a lot of problems. However, I must say that we have observed very, very big passion in helping Afghani refugees that were fleeing Afghanistan after the Taliban taking over the power in Kabul. I must say that I was very surprised to be called on Saturday and to be able to communicate on personal phones with adjudicating officers that really wanted to finish some cases very, very fast. And they were working, because it was the time of let's say, home office, so they were working even during the weekends, and really sometimes this was very, very effective. But it was mostly about Afghani applicants. So you could see the hurry in asylum procedures, because it was not a speedy procedure, it was a procedure that was conducted with a hurry, because for most of the time of detention, nothing was going on. And then during last, couple of weeks, it had to be done, the interview and the decision issued, and probably some appeal, examination of appeal. I've seen that this hurry caused a very low quality of those decisions. Maybe it was also connected with this unexperienced staff. You must see that only 1% recognition rate of Iraqi applicants in Poland. More than 1,000 applications from Iraqis in 2021, and the recognition rate was less than 1%. In EU, statistics show that last year or 2 years ago, it was 30 to 40% recognition rate. In Italy, if Kyle K can confirm, I remember there was 95% of recognition rate of Iraqi applicants, and in Poland, less than 1%. It was very, very unfair to Kurdish people, and not only Kurdish, but Iraqi applicants. I must say that people from the border were not accepted as a rule. I believe it was just to show that it is not the path to use, because you will not be accepted, you will be rejected. Refugee boards, it's statistics of the refugee board, the statistics speak for themselves, because as you have heard that the refugee board has issued over 800 decisions in appeal procedures in year 2020 and 2021, and they have not recognized anybody to be a refugee, and only a couple of people to be beneficiaries of subsidiary protection. It's a disgrace. I just can't find any words. These people that are working there, they are selected there as representatives of executive governments. Yes, so they are coming from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Justice, or Ministry of Interior Affairs, and they are like public servants. They are not independent, and they were very unfair towards especially newcomers that were crossing the border with Belarus. The observations concerning procedure on return that we've noticed as well is that most of the people that came to Polish border, I believe out of those files that we have, about 60% of the cases, these people that were stopped at the border received a return decision, return order within 24 hours. Because then after 48 hours, they were sent to the court to decide about their detention. So very often, very often, they were interviewed and received the decision on their return the same day that they got here. So maybe it was speedy, but I don't think that was a real examination of the situation in the country of origin. We participate in cases in which foreigners' asylum applications was not accepted and registered to the border. I think this is something that I already said, that this is this original scene that, you know, the border guards were not hearing that somebody is asking for international protection. 1 or 2 day procedure on return ending with a decision on return does not comply with basic laws, especially principle of non-refoulement. This is impossible to analyze foreign situation in the country of origin within 2 days. Yes, this is our observation, and it's and also one of the elements that you could observe, that after some time, at the beginning, the people that were crossing the border illegally were receiving 1 or 2 years Schengen ban to enter Schengen zone. But at the end of this crisis, everybody that was stopped was getting a Schengen ban and entry to cease for 5 years. So it was very automatic, and one of the elements, one of the reasons to impose the Schengen ban was the threat to public health that persons were presenting because of the COVID times, and they were coming here without COVID passports, so that they received a Schengen 5-year Schengen ban because of lacking the COVID passports and doing it without official routes. So it's strange to see the pregnant woman that is crossing the border, you know, presenting a threat to public health, and then getting the 5-year Schengen ban with the return order, and then spending in detention 6 or 9 months, because the courts were also saying that the reasons for their stopping was protection of public order, public security, or public health. And they didn't say that the real reason was really the COVID situation. So even after COVID was already suspended, the courts were upholding the detention because of the reasons of state security in this case, or public order and public health, because it's like one provision that covers all of them. So normally, the appeal procedures in the return procedures last average about 2 years. So when the border guards are issuing return order and people don't waive their right to appeal, the time of examination of this appeal may last about 2 years, with the exception of the cases when people are in detention, because then, you know, the public authorities are trying to make it faster. But as a rule, I think return appeal procedures last very, very long. 2 years, I think it's even too short to say. I think that to this week, I received 2 second instance decision in return cases when we filed appeal in 2019, and it's the end of 2022. So it's 3 years when the Office for Foreigners was examining application. Most of the practical examples that I used were gathered during the implementation of a project that was funded by the EEA funds, and the project was titled "Migrants Have the Right to Have Rights." And our team of lawyers was collecting documentation of cases of foreigners. And when we look at the statistics, we're representing 281 migrants that were mostly coming through this Polish-Belarusian border. As you can see, only 9 of them came from were Ukrainians, and most of them were from some very exotic countries, you know, starting with Iraq, but Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Iran. I'm sorry, those of you that are coming from those countries, that I consider them exotic, but for us, in the place where we are in Europe, the natural migrants are persons coming and fleeing from Russian Federation, sometimes from Central Asia. But here we really had 33 countries represented during this time of crisis from all over the world. And I must say that Ukrainians were in a very small minority of those that we have helped under this project. We were helping Ukrainians under different projects, but they were not asking for international protection. I would say that one of the clients from Ukraine that we really had, and she is the real beneficiary of the war, was my client, and she was a how do you say, she was a sex worker. Yes, so she has stayed in Poland illegally and didn't follow the return order in 2020. So she was detained, and she didn't have real reasons to ask for international protection. And she received negative decision, and then she found our organization and asked us to appeal it. And after reviewing the files, I thought the appeal will extend the stay in detention, but I said to her that it will not help you, because you will be expelled anyway. To Ukraine, it's very easy to be returned because we have the border, land border together. So I explained to her that it's better to go back to home country, and maybe after 1 year of Schengen ban, you can come back under the visa-free regime and come here. But she didn't really want to come back to home. And after the Russian invasion on the territory of Ukraine, she was released from detention after 7 or 9 months, yes, of staying there. And moreover, right by now, she has a supplementary or subsidiary protection decision. So she is a real beneficiary of this war. The only Ukrainian citizen I know was happy about the consequences of the war for her, because she didn't have to go back to the country of origin, and she has legalized her stay. And unfortunately, she's still working in this profession that she used to do, that she used to work. So under this project, we have also occasion of representing the unaccompanied minors from the border. I was appointed in 8 cases as court curator, and sometimes I was getting a power of attorney by the curators of the persons, or some sort of guardians of the persons, because what was happening as well, unaccompanied children, when they were coming in the company of some relatives, but like far relatives, the courts in Poland were forming some foster families of them, and they were putting them together in detention centers after establishing this foster family. So this was the situation of foster families being in the detention centers to be deported. It was very, very peculiar. We represented 6 unaccompanied minors who have been considered adults by Polish authorities. The law says that whenever you establish the age of a person based on some medical method, you are obliged to say what is the margin of mistake. And if the doctor doesn't say it, then you should not accept this evaluation of the age. But we have seen in the 6 cases of those unaccompanied minors that the doctors were saying he is 18, period. And the guy was claiming that he was 16. Yes, the average mistake in the bone age evaluation is about 2 years. So it's possible that the person that under examination was considered 18 was really 16, especially that these guys were having copies and sometimes originals of the documents from the country of origin that were not accepted. And I believe this was the one of the elements that was a real violation of Polish law, that the age assessment was not done properly. So we have, during implementing of this project, we've represented about more than 200 clients in asylum and return procedures. We have done 28 interventions about the access to territory and international protection. It was not in the forest, it was in the border checkpoints when persons were trying to come officially to Poland without visa and were coming by taxi, because it was only the car, let's say, border entry. So they were coming by taxi, paying for 1 mile of taxi of 400, 500 euros to get to Polish border guards and claim and ask for protection. Majority of our interventions were successful, I would say, in this access to territory, but some of them were not. So we made 50 interventions about detention cases. We wrote appeals, motions to release, amicus curiae briefs. We wrote 24 appeals on return decisions during those 24 months of implementation of this project. We have represented 10 migrants in administrative courts. And I don't report the refugee board's appeals here under the statistics of this project, but we are filing probably 70 to 100 appeals a year. And I would say that 1–2% of them might be successful. So it's very, very, very rare to be successful in the refugee board, as you know. Okay, I don't report here the activities of other in other projects, in other capacities. So I want to open it up to questions. Maybe you have some specific issues that I may refer to when we are speaking about the new borders, new walls, or the general situation of refugees in Poland, and procedures, representations, detention, access to protection or deportation. These are the fields that I can answer your questions when you have them. Okay, and if you want to contact me, please email me. This is my email address here, and I would be more than happy to answer. So let me right now stop for questions. If you don't ask questions, I will tell you why we should not allow other member states of European Union to send people back to Poland under Dublin procedures.
Okay, we have one question, but probably Nicole Olsen would like to make that live. So if she can raise the hand, I can open the mic. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting and yeah, very interesting to follow. Also very alarmed to see how the situation and the rates and the rate of acceptation for refugees, and also for temporary protection. My question goes more like, I mean, you as a person who has been involved in this field and who have seen the trends around the years changing. as I see the thing is like, even if we change the rules, or even if the rules, even if we don't change them, the rules are there, and it says like you cannot detain someone for this type of months, or you cannot, you should be granted 4 square meters in the refugee camps and so on. Even when the rules and even when the conventions have like very clear patterns about like what is the treatment that we should have with refugees or with any people, like any human, any citizens. The problem comes when the people working in the administration, like also like military border control, but also people working in the, you know, like in the institutions, in the and so on, they do not follow, like they do not follow the rules, or they do not give like the treatment to the people. So I don't know, like, do you see like what's the change on it? Because like, my personal feeling is like, even if we change the rules, it comes to the people who are working there, and it might be like some sort of institutionalized racism towards migrants, or like xenophobia, I don't know. So I don't see in a foreseeable future that even if we change the rules, because the rules are already like made in a way to give like rights to citizens. And I mean, we talk about these articles, and we talk about like, yeah, no detention, no restrictions of movement if you are like trying to escape for your life, but in the real life, it's not happening. So yeah, how do you see this?
You turn off.
Sorry,
turn on
yes,
the,
I noticed that I turned off the microphone. The transmission of audio was not very good in my case. I don't know if you could understand everything. From what I've understood from your question is that, of course, that you're pessimistic about the future, because you say the rules and the rights are not respected by the officials, public servants, or the border guards or security institutions. And I must say that I agree with you that our observations were that the rights of persons are not respected. That's why we call the project that we started in 2020, Migrants Have the Right to Have Rights, because of the book by Hannah Arendt, The Origins of Totalitarianism. In 1951, after the war, she said that the main reason of problems in Europe was that the aliens were deprived the right to have rights. Yes, that the people that are different have no right to have rights, despite the fact that you know, on the paper there are some procedural guarantees and rights are foreseen there, but in practice it's not happening. And we observed that, and that's why we stood up for these people, and we tried to defend them after they were lucky and they got admitted to Polish territory. Because me personally, I was not, let's say, scouting through the forest in this closed zone of the border, because I had some different role. I was going to detention centers, and I was trying to help these people to fully enforce their rights, procedural rights. And I would say that we were successful, because what we observed, out of these people that we represented, only 4 of them were deported. 4 of them were deported that we represented, you know, as we said, 281 under this project, but, you know, we had access to other clients as well. And I would say the deportation happened only to those that were not represented, and to those that were somehow misled in the procedures, that were their rights were abused. The COVID restrictions were used against them, because they were put under quarantine and they didn't have access to lawyers during 2 weeks of quarantine, and 2 weeks was the time to appeal the decision, so they couldn't do it. And I believe that the persons that we represented that were deported, in 2 cases, these were the persons that really wanted to go back. Why? Because they said, I cannot stand detention any longer. It was 6 months and I'm staying here even longer, because, you know, they gave me negative decisions, and right now I can be detained for this purpose of deportation, so I want to go voluntarily. And those 2 persons that went out voluntarily, they decided to go voluntarily, you know, actually one of them was this political political activist that I mentioned to you at the very beginning, that his embassy was informed about him. And the second, it was very, very, I'm still shocked with the things that happened. So this second person was deported to the country of origin by Polish government, and 3 weeks later, Polish spokesman of Polish Internal Security Agency is having a press conference, and he says the name of a person, the date of deportation, the country where the person was deported, and the fact that he was deported because he was considered to be radical Islamist that had contacts with ISIS, which was not true. So it was like a death sentence in the country where this person was deported, was the death sentence for the person whose name, the date of deportation, the reasons for deportation were named. And this spokesman is responsible probably for prison imprisonment or the death of this person. Unfortunately, this person who didn't want to appeal his case longer, he said, I want to voluntarily return. And he asked to go back to home country. I was one to ask for that. And then the Polish Internal Security Agency says it was our great success. We discovered the radical Islamist, 20 years old guy that was a student of some medical, let's say, institution, and he decided to go back to his country of origin. I don't want to say which country of origin, but it was a pure violation of his rights, and we tried to track him down. He doesn't answer email. His home was visited by our, let's say, friends, and it's closed. So I think he's either in prison or maybe he was executed if possible, or murdered, unless he really has been lucky. And before this was announced officially, 3 weeks after he was let's say deported, that maybe he escaped to some other country before that moment. I hope. But as it was asked by the participants, sometimes the rights are pure fiction. Then what can you do right now if there is no let's say you cannot represent the person because you don't have right to represent him. Informing the public about this person may bring even bigger threat to this person right now if he was okay, because right now the government of this country will maybe notice this press conference that earlier was not noticed. So I cannot make the big controversy out of that right away. I will do it in some time, but I'm waiting for the time until this person maybe is safe.
We hope to. So Kyle have another question. In ND and NT versus Spain, the court ruled that where there are enough arrangements for legal entry to secure the right to request protection under the convention in a genuine and effective manner, states can require application to be submitted at existing borders points. What constitutes enough arrangement, given that in Melilla, where the case took place, the legal method of border entry was understaffed and not functional?
Okay, so I remember this case of the European Court for Human Rights, yes, and it was actually a big disappointment when the ruling was given. But it's even according to this case, crossing the border illegally or against the rules, was in case of Polish Belarus, it would be justified because there were no other legal possibilities of applying for international protection. In Melilla case, I think that in Ceuta and Melilla, the refugees, the applicants from Africa had the right to access the official, let's say, border crossing points and file for asylum, as far as I remember. But they were choosing to go through those fences of those enclaves. And here in Poland, there is no really the right to leave Belarus for the Iraqi citizens via official entry points. Actually, the beginning of this big crisis at one moment was a big wave of migrants marching to one of the entry points of Polish border, and we have put the big police units and the water tanks. I think it was like that, that they were shooting with the water towards those people that were coming, even before they reached any of the Polish officials to say what are the reasons for them to come. There was no possibility of applying for the international protection at the border in official entry points for people from Iraq, Afghanistan, or people with no documents that came there, and they were actually robbed of the documents by Belarusian forces. Very often it was happening as well. So I think that our case of Poland and Belarusian border is different than the case of Ceuta and Melilla, and this case of ECHR is not fully governing the facts of the case of our situation here.
Okay, thank you, Kyle, for the question. So Lauren McCown have two questions actually. One, it is about some special analysis say the new borders in the EU are set decentralized in this current train station. What do you know about movement control, passport controls in public transportation throughout Poland?
I don't know where is this question. I was trying to look at it. Where is it in the chat?
Yeah, QA.
Okay, I try. Okay, yes, some special analysis say that the new borders are set to centralize in the current train stations. What do you know about the movement control, passport controls in public? Throughout Poland, I don't think that right now the passport controls happen within Poland. You know, that's on the public transportation, they can be done, I think, on the trains leaving Poland to Germany. These are the trains that the passport controls happen, and on the buses as well. I'm not trying to advise on the routes from Poland to the Western European countries, if this is the reason for asking this question. I believe that anybody that decides to transit from Poland, even those Iraqis that have 1% of chance of being recognized in Poland, they probably are not doing a right move, because Poland is accepting returnees under Dublin again. For half a year after Russian invasion of Ukraine, we suspended Dublin cooperation with other countries, but on August 1st, we said, we are fine. We don't have problems with reception of refugees, and you can send the foreigners back to Poland. So right now we are seeing the second wave of the same people that we've seen in detention centers, and they are again sometimes they're again in detention. You know, I have a family that was pregnant in Polish detention center last year. They were released because of pregnancy and some problems with the child. So they came to Germany, they gave birth to the child, they returned on the 18th of August to Poland. Polish border guards have shown on Facebook, yes, we have these illegal immigrants on our border that were transferred from Germany, and we will deport them to the country of origin. This was the message, shortly speaking. And they were detained, and they are detained until today. 18th of August, they are detained until today. The courts don't pay attention to anything. They say, this child has no documents. They have no birth certificate. It was a child born in Germany, and there's a little slip of paper showing that this is the child born in Germany, but it's not an official birth certificate. And this person, this family with 4 children, I believe, is in detention and will be in detention by January 1st. So another, almost 6 months, and it's bad. It's bad. So I wouldn't advise anybody to go to other country. I think it's better to try to fight in the first procedure to try to find for a positive outcome in Poland if you're outside of detention. But at the same time, when persons were in detention for 6 or 9 months, I have some, I would say, friends that are migrants from those detention centers, and they told me, Tomasz, you know, Poland has hurt us so much, detaining us for 9 months. We cannot stay here. We will not stay here. Poland has hurt us so much. And I believe it, that this is the feeling that if you're stopped at the border and you say, I apply for asylum, and then you stay 9 months in detention and you're not even interviewed, then, you know, you can think that it's unfair. Okay. And the question, do you know Polish-based non-profit organizations organizing legal literacy trainings for non-law background activists to grow the support capacities in Polish civil society? I don't know these trainings. I don't know what organizations are doing that for activists. I think there is a Grupa Granica. There's a called group border. Some of our lawyers were consulted on Grupa Granica. Myself, you know, I got some contacts from Grupa Granica, and they are activists in the forest, and they are organized better about these activist organizations. We are like a second line, that we are in detention centers. We are not in the forest. I think Grupa Granica and Fundacja Ocalenie, Foundation Salvation, it's called. Fundacja Ocalenie may be the proper address to look for this type of support. Sometimes there are some trainings organized by UNHCR for law students or non-lawyers on, let's say, refugee protection. I myself, I'm running the refugee legal clinic, refugee law clinic at the university, and but you know, I don't know the literacy training course for non-lawyers. I don't know them. You are muted.
Sorry. Okay, I think this is the last question. If someone else have another question, we can respond in minutes. But I think nobody. So we will close the lesson tonight, and I want to thank everyone for being here. Also, thank you, Professor Tomasz, for accepting our invitation and for the great lecture for tonight. It was really, really interesting. I didn't know about anything about the Polish law immigration, so it was really interesting. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I wish I could speak about great Polish music or Polish literature, but unfortunately I have to speak about abuse of the rights of migrants in Poland. Unfortunately, I think this is the case that is very serious, and we are trying to get to the European Court for Human Rights in many cases right now about the person in detention. And I think that in a couple of years, we'll see the result of those procedures. So I believe that something may be changed. And what should be changed is to stop putting children in detention, because the number of children that were detained was too great. Even one child in detention is wrong. But when and I had access to people that were children in detention suffering for 9-10 months, sometimes with suicidal attempts. This is horrible. So I think it was needed to speak about the difficult stories today.
Thank you so much. Next week we'll start with the roundtables, and if you prefer to participate, in any case, you are not obligated, of course, but if you prefer to participate in this roundtable, you are free to join us in any time. Thank you so much again.
Thank you very much, and have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.